Hello everyone, my name is Narisa Wild. I'm the Senior Vice President of Digital Solutions at Informa. I'm delighted to join you all, and thank you to Marketmuse for inviting me to speak about some of the things that are very near and dear to our digital transformation within Informa. The title of my presentation, Embracing Digital Transformation and Supporting Your Content Teams to Thrive. Because in essence, digital transformation cannot occur successfully without talent, culture, and digital agility. Let's dive in. So to begin with, let's talk about what we're going to cover today in our session. As teams evolve their customer journeys, so each of you, every team, content team, but actually all teams, must ask the question, how do I begin to set myself up and my team up to be successful within our digital transformation journey? Seems like an easy question, but quite tricky to answer, and flavors of this will differ from organization to organization. But overall, the key elements within a transformation prioritize structure. So thinking about truly what is the target organizational design for a content team, to allow this team to thrive and evolve and move through this digital transformation as seamlessly as possible. Leadership. Leadership comes from within. Leadership comes from heart. Leadership is the voice allowing us to move forward in our path with conviction and commitment. Culture. Think about the culture in your own organization. Where can you begin to make improvements? How do we shift the mindset of both our executive leadership team and leadership throughout the organization that allows our teams to feel supported, safe, and in an environment where they can nurture and grow? Your operating model. How do we set our teams up to be more agile, to be nimble, to take risks, to be brave? Talent and skills. What is it our teams need from us in order to be successful? They may be very talented and qualified, but perhaps with digital transformation, the skills that we need them to prioritize could be different. It doesn't mean they're not qualified or capable. We just need to put the right tools in their hand and allow them to thrive and move forward. Let's look at each of these steps in turn. So first of all, what is content? It's a big word, right? Or it's a singular word, but it has big meaning. Content can be so many things. It's content that we own, so assets that we own within our organization. Anything from case studies, perspectives, interviews. It's all the content we create for the web. Our infographics, checklists, listicles, episodes via video, via content, via interviews, streaming content, our event content, so whether that's recorded or audio, or maybe interviews with key sponsors or attendees, print, paid content, where sponsors and advertisers are looking to promote their products and services within our organization, guides on how to manage your organization or look for products and services, and then things that we do internally. So quick reference guides, episodes that dive into leadership and styles of management. All threads of communication are wrapped around content. To keep moving my little bubble. For me, at the heart of digital transformation, the success lies in our culture. And in our heart and soul, we need to move to value-based leadership. That is what will allow us to harness true leaders who move forward with compassion and use their talent to truly be digital. And this is important, this little nugget here. In order to grow outside, either to shareholders, to our customers, to private equity holders, to whomever you're addressing, you need to grow inside. Growing digital is as much about the people and the culture as about the business models, the strategy, the organizational design. And yes, we all know this, but changing the social architecture is incredibly difficult. And it's very much required for you to be brave. Make brave choices around strategic bets. And one won't work unless the former happens too. Within that, we need to look at our generation Y and Z, their levels of commitment to working through emotional needs, their commitment to purpose and a vision, and the need to have a voice and a way to articulate their needs. And purpose, as I said, purpose is critical for this generation. Doesn't mean it's not critical for other generations, but it's what drives them, and it shifts the way we do business. And are you prepared for that today? Of course, diversity, equity, inclusion. We need to be thinking about all perspectives, all points of view. We need to be listening, truly listening to what others have to say, and thinking about those voices and those comments and those inputs as part of our decision-making process. And talent. How do we nurture the talent we have and grow it in different ways, make it grow new branches, new ways of growing, new organizations, new functions that maybe didn't exist, and we'll touch on a few of those. A lot of words here, but really what I'm trying to say is that when you, as someone who is in the depths of digital transformation, are trying to prioritize how to navigate this landscape, you must prioritize diversity and inclusion, Generation Y and Z, and COVID-19 and the impact of this pandemic on us. And the points to take out from here are really that when you're putting products at the heart of your business, you have to be ready to change aspects of your organization, and that oftentimes most of your challenges, quite frankly, are not related to technology. They're related to people, to processes, to minds and hearts and ways of working. Digital transformation is taking place in the context of three other interconnected forces. Adaptation to mindset, shifting the way you think, being open to different perspectives, needs and aspirations of our Gens Y and Z, and the hugely increased importance of improving diversity and inclusion. Last but not least, we've all been whacked by COVID-19, and it has accelerated the decline of legacy revenues that were financing our digital transactions historically, and in turn amplifying the need to go digital, really breaking up our old experience of how we were organized and making us feel like we were in this permanent threshold of high stress and uncertainty. It's a challenge, right? Well, lastly, we want to think about these organizations have to respond to the four forces simultaneously. Digitalization, the need to substantially increase diversity and inclusion, the different realities and requirements of Gen Z and Gen Y, and the challenges of COVID-19. However, just as the coronavirus crisis accelerated structural shifts, so too has it amplified the internal change that is critical within an organization. How to energetically and effectively pour on the levers of leadership, culture, and talent can address all four change drivers. Very important. Transitioning to looking at a content operating model, what are the main areas of responsibilities and process in this organization? Strategy. We need to plan, we need to think, we need to have the right spread of resources. We need to balance priorities and scheduling against these business critical needs. Everything's critical, right? But you need to have a method to create balance in the way you approach your work. The creativity, the creation, the raw process of creating content, creating it, thinking about it, producing it, and organizing it. And then the production, taking components of content, so perhaps elements of different content modules to create collections and creating almost new assets out of different parts of these modules that you pull together. How we merchandise, right? So how do we share these assets both internally and externally to partners within our organization, as well as syndication partners and partners outside of our organization? And then activation. How do you get people to actually see it? How do you get people to promote it? How do you help your internal teams understand what this content is doing, the purpose that it brings? And then, very important, the data and insight, the measurement. How are you assessing on an ongoing basis that you're driving performance, efficiency, and effectiveness to every piece of content that you're creating? Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not the only answer, but it's one suggestion of an organization for an editorial team that is digitally led and transitioning to being digital first. The roles that I would call out really that feel very different to traditional editorial teams are a curator, syndicator, data and analytics lead, and research. I'll talk a bit more about those in a moment. Now, this is just to give you a feel for how might we organize an editorial team and how does it compare how you're doing it currently. Going right from the top, the leadership. Many names for this role: editorial director, strategy, content lead, person that is really bringing all of us together to create the content that our customers need and want. What is the problem we are trying to solve for our customers? Through the answer to that question, we create a content strategy with our leaders in our organization, not just the editorial team. We also think about how we're assigning content to our writers and the people on the field for us. And content can be creative in the sense of editorial, photography, art. Content comes in many shapes and forms. Writing and creating content, and how we do that in a way that is relevant to the time of day, the device it's being displayed on, and of course to whom it's being displayed. The editing of content, the planning and publishing of content, and how we maintain accountability for the quality of the content we're pushing out. The promotion, right? Internally, externally, through social, through our digital ecosystem. How we're tracking, measurement, conversion, performance, improvement, A/B testing, optimization. All of this lies on the shoulders of the lead within your editorial team, and it's a cycle that keeps rotating. Some of the key roles that I'll just call out today, and the one that is very exciting to me, is a creator. Some of you may have this, some of you may not. It's a person that's creating blog posts, videos, social media content, but really it's the timeliness of that content, and they're not an editor. As I said here, their skill is to refine and improve editorial content. They're divergent thinkers, creating entirely new editorial experiences by finding sources from diverse and sometimes divergent point of view. Curators are something new and much needed. They bring spice, they bring color, they bring more flavor to the content that you're creating. They put you in the face of your customers as a voice of authority and someone that thinks differently and not just following all of the noise of how everyone else is thinking. Try to think differently in the way that you create content. Your writers and your content creators, they can be internal or externally sourced. And it really depends on the type of content you're trying to create, whether that's visual, audio, or written. And they don't just create content, our creators. They do very important things. For example, they really help drive the strategic vision to our senior marketeers and leaders. They pitch new content types that align with the strategy that senior marketeers may have not thought of, because they're always looking for that divergent and different perspective. And they share resources they may have in their own network that could be really critical to your success. Let's move on now to think about content creation in a digitally thriving organization. there's a process, right? There's a method to this. And I just broke it down into 5 steps. Ideate, thinking about, discussing, collaborating, researching, testing the focus and area that you want for content creation. Step 2 is your planning, putting more meat to the bone, where you start to plan and model your content modules, your content types, and noting anything that you need that's new and doesn't exist in the assets that you either have or are creating, and who can do that for you. Create, step 3, raw content components that are created in componentized fashion, whether it's text, images, video. And the components are critical because they allow you to slice and dice your content assets and your content types to create multiple solutions. And this is the atomic use of content creation that we'll talk about. Editing, critical to the process. Refining, iterating, coming up with final, and I say final like that because nothing's ever final, right? We continue to iterate set of raw content components. And step 5, the structure and the assembly. Structuring content to be assembled to its intended asset and served up to its designated device, content model, post-approval process. And then being delivered in whichever format it can be utilized in. And that could be multiple, right? It could be a kiosk at an event. It could be an Apple Watch. It could be a PDF. The options are boundless. Take a moment to think about content structure hierarchy. It's really important when you're creating content that you can understand the anatomy of what creates great content. And it starts in the center with the components, right? These are the raw chunks of content. The full interview, the unedited video, the research data, long form paper. And from that content component, we create the content properties. That's the pieces that make up your content. Title, subtitle, header, second header, image. Those are your attributes. From there, we move to our content type. So what kind of content are you creating for your final product? A blog, a web article, an infographic, a podcast, all of the above potentially. And then the model, right? The content model. How the content elements properties are assembled to create the content type. Is it a content marketing program? Is it a chapter? Is it an editorial release with a cyclical rhythm to it? And that assembly model is on the outer ring. This is the structure for which and how many content types are pulled together to create a package or a campaign. And here's an example to bring it to life. So we start with an interview from a subject matter expert. From that interview, we can think about our title, the body components, the quotes, the date, the author, of course. From those elements, we can start to pull out some of our modules from it, right? So tweets, an article page, a piece of video, a printed article, a post, a social feed. From there, we create our content types. So blog posts, tweets, social headers, printed articles. And with all of those elements, we can create a package. And just one example here that our sales team may sell as a silver story package. There's social nuggets, there's influencer commentary, there's customer story, which is our long form content. There are photos, which is the visual element, which could also include video. There's articles and blogs. And there are many ways to slice and dice this content in this package, depending on who are the recipients, where you want that content to be delivered, for how, for whom, and when. Take a moment to think about content modeling, and coming from the events business, we think about structuring content on the show floor. So the show floor at a physical event and actually the content on a web page. It's not too dissimilar, right? So you can see here from the color codes, these are just examples. Again, they're not blueprints of the only way to do things. I'm trying to give you tools and resources to help you start to think about new ways to create your content. So the very light orange is dynamic content. It's content that's generated based on behavior preferences and users' interests. And it's generated at that moment in time that the user requests a page. So if they did a search on your site for sustainable agriculture, some of the elements on the page that are returned could be dynamic elements of content. Defined content, the darker orange, are the content elements like a paragraph, an image, that have been specifically created for this asset. Dark blue, promotional content. Those are your products and services that are there to market those products and services with a very specific call to action. Register now, sign up today, etc. Personalized content, the light blue. That's pulling specific user information. Narisa's feed from May 31st, 2022, based on purchasing and browsing history. It can be explicit or implicit. So we can drive content based on what we know, or we can drive content based on behavior and other attributes. And then templated content like your footer, your navigation, your header, things that just appear on every single page consistently. And just as an illustration, you can see how that breakup and structure of content on different page types, content types, can be very different. Just offering here, as we dive into the atomic structure of content, right? That's how we like to frame it. You start with the nucleus, the smallest element, and then you build it out. And within that atomic content structure, you can pull, it's like plug and play and the Lego pieces that you pull together to create these different packages. And this is just an example. I'm sure many of you have come up with similar solutions or even better ones, but this was really just to show you how all of the elements we've looked at before in terms of atomic content structure and modeling of content and structure of content on the page, how it all can relate back to sales and revenue opportunities as well. Thinking about collaboration, so we work in, a distributed environment today. Many of our teams are not together physically, and that's okay. There are many tools to help you. It's critical to have a content calendar and a planning tool, whether that's something that you use off the shelf or you create internally through an Excel document. Writer briefs and assignments. So managing content assignments in one place. And this is one place where Marketmuse can greatly help you to see where the white space is using AI technology and optimize your content opportunities in these white spaces. Content optimization and review. The ability to see and plan all of your content, whatever type of content it is. Allow for comments and feedback, editing and version control. And making sure that all of those commenting and feedback are either AI and human. They're both very important. So what is a content brief? Moving on to the area around content brief to optimize content creation, to allow you to have a distributed workforce, and also to think about how better can you create content that is topic based, serving your audiences and your customers based on what the digital ecosystem is telling you people are looking for, right? So it's a content marketing brief, preferably digital, and it's a document that clarifies expectations for an entire content marketing campaign or an individual piece of content like an email or a blog post. It contains everything that the creators and implementers need to execute on the content correctly and stay in line with marketing and revenue goals. Let's dive into that a bit. Making a brief. It's a really smart idea. Don't just have a conversation about it and then expect everyone to understand what it was you wanted them to do or what the needs of your customers are, because they won't. And information is disseminated and shared and understood in very different ways. So it's critical that you have a brief to support that. Unless you want to receive work from content collaborators that miss the mark and require major edits, the brief is critical. Assuming you'd rather aim on the side of proactive and clear management, then you need to brief your teams. Cannot stress the importance of a content brief. Just touching on Marketmuse for a moment, Marketmuse can create efficiencies for your team. You'll hear so much about that during the course of the conference, but just some key points to touch on today. 90% of content gets no search traffic, 90. Stop wasting your money to pay writers to guess about what content should be created and use machine learning and intelligent ways to understand the white space and where the opportunities are that sometimes your customers don't even know that they want or need. Invest in analytical resources to support this AI approach. Data and insights to inform your decisions are very critical in the content brief creation. Retrain to write with topics and not keywords. Let's transition towards the topics that we are looking for when we search and when we organize content creation to drive behavior. So this is a very long grid for you to take away on what a content brief should include. Starts in the top left corner and moves all the way along like snakes and ladders, giving you a very step-by-step view on what to think about when you're creating a content brief. There's a lot of information here, and it's really for you to have as a takeaway, but upskilling, moving on to the upskilling now. Upskilling your people for digital transformation is as much about, if not more about, the people as it is the technology. And we have a quote here: technical competence is temporary, but intellectual curiosity must be permanent. So we have to invest in our people. We have to put the time to ensure that digital transformation is less about technology and more about the people using it. The platforms and the solutions matter less. The people using it and how they use them matter much more. So build those skills. Let people be prepared to be accountable and autonomous, but give them the tools to be successful. We must prioritize who to upskill first, because it's impossible to do everyone all at once. So it's really important to think about who will most benefit from day one. Think about your employees who are adaptable, curious, and flexible already. Learning agility, it's not something that's easily taught from formal training. It's developed over time, and it's about firing up people's curiosity, their motivation to learn, and making it easy for them to find upskilling resources. Couple more. Think about the different learning styles. We all have different ways that we absorb information, that we learn, and that we thrive. And it's really important to figure out for each of your team members what type of learning is going to allow them to be accountable, yes, but successful. And it's important to align the learning and the education with interests. Upskilling involves a lot of personal effort. Sometimes the time sacrifice, if the learning is happening outside of work hours, is challenging. If you're encouraging your workforce to upskill, make sure it's in skills that align with their interests and career goals. If they're not into it, they're not going to make the effort to be proactive and successful. To close out today, let's think about some of the challenges you're likely to face, because you are, and there are many, but you can approach them in this iterative fashion as I've described previously. Strategy. What are the challenges there? There may be no common intake process for content. Maybe your content's coming from multiple people, multiple sources, multiple agencies. Maybe you don't have a planning process. There could be a bottleneck for unplanned content and planned content. And there may be no one way that content can be prioritized. Perhaps in the creation, you have not split out the processes of creating and designing assets. Production. Maybe you haven't split out the processes for the creation and designing of assets, or maybe you've not created an atomic content structure as we looked at earlier. Activation. Do you have a system or a way to track how content is captured, published and promoted, and how successful it has been? And then measurement. Maybe you don't have a formal measurement strategy for your content. Maybe it just comes from the outcome of campaigns that the content supports. But it can't be an afterthought. It has to be first and foremost the insight that you get from the performance of your content itself. To close out, you've heard it before. Stay agile, be nimble, test, iterate, and start small. Find nuggets and build from that. Maybe introduce a team member that you don't currently have, the curator or the syndicator, for example, and set them specific goals and metrics of success, and track closely against these goals to report back to senior team. Be willing to pilot AI technology to change the way you think and feel about editorial creation. You may need a resource or two focused on data-driven solutions and AI engineering, so that each of your initiatives are centered around goals, metrics, and what does and doesn't work. And finally, be brave, my friends. Be really brave. Thank you for your time today. I'll look in the chat for any questions that come up, and I'm happy to connect with any of you directly. Have fun. Bye for now.